Welcome back to the State of Flow podcast. Three entrepreneurs creating the new wave of entrepreneurship, the way we live as entrepreneurs. And yes, it is soft, not soft. So let's kick this episode off and start with Elon Musk.
This is super juicy. This is some good
This is
material
good.
right now. I'd love to hear Talen's reason why he thinks Elon Musk wants to own Twitter.
Shit, I gotta go first?
Of course.
No, that sounds good. I truly believe this is how Elon Musk thinks about business. I think Elon looks at the biggest problems in the world and is like, I'm gonna fix exclusively like the most catastrophic problems. I think that's why he's starting like Tesla, 'cause that's like energy, solar, environmental. I think SpaceX is actually a play for resources. So I've never really understood why SpaceX would be a good company until someone's like, well, if he goes to the moon or to Mars and you can bring back resources that change the world, he's like officially innovated on like the highest level. So I think it's a resource play.
No, I just want to add to the SpaceX. Also, it's the cheapest way to bring up as many satellites as possible to space, which then with his
The new internet.
Starlink.
Starlink. With
yes.
Starlink now, he can make the most affordable internet service worldwide. Anybody in the world can get service. You could be in like a remote area and still get service. So his play is eventually when you get everybody connected to the internet, you change the whole economy in the whole world.
That's
So I
that's
actually
true
think-
too. So multifaceted.
I think there's always a multifaceted play with Elon. So anyway, sorry.
I
Continue.
would agree
wanted
with you.
to add
I don't want
that.
to sound like we're like simplifying all this, but
Yeah.
main points. So I actually think his play for buying Twitter is he realizes that social media in its current state is going to underpin democracy. And this goes back to like Naval and what he said on the Rogan podcast years ago, where he's like tech skews left. And there's so many like leftists in tech companies, and who gets to decide what is policed like on tech companies, which is the people at tech companies. Like Google, it influences search results. That's the job of Google, right? So what do they decide what should be influenced and what people should know? Well, it's the people in those companies that decide this information is relevant, this is what we should push, this information is bad. When that gets politically skewed in any direction, that underpins free speech. And in a democratic society, you could say that social media probably has the biggest influence on people's opinions. Hence why, as we've talked about, I think in other podcasts, TikTok in China, they like really control like what's on TikTok because they really control what's like sent to their or what people consume in their country. And I think Elon Musk looks at Twitter and sees that it's like not skewing in the free speech direction, and that speech that is being policed is not necessarily like hate speech or anything worth policing. So I think his play is to like make sure democracy doesn't get completely upended by social media companies that are just like, we want only these ideas on our platform. Anything else is just completely banned. And we want people to think that if you're not thinking this way, it's not good and it should be banned, because that's going to indoctrinate the younger generation.
For the viewers, I think it'd probably be beneficial to explain how technology skews left in politics.
Yeah, from my understanding of why technology skews left, like technology is about liberty and freedom, if you think about it. Like the whole idea of like tech empowers the individual, we'll say, at the expense of the collective. If we want to get like really into the beliefs of it all. Like if you can like go online and you can have a business where, or you can think what you want, you can control, I'm trying to think here. Just give me a second to like formulate my thoughts on this one.
Sorry, I really challenged you on that
Yeah,
one.
you challenged me on this one.
Yeah, I'm good.
It's because my dad asked me the same question, and I feel like I didn't give a really good answer. So I know with how good of a clear thinker you are, you'd be able to articulate it better than the answer that I gave.
I'm also curious if it's a function of groupthink. Like Silicon Valley, you get a few prominent left-thinking thought leaders, and then part of that would be like those kind of key idols. Anybody else that kind of formulates underneath them, trying to create a tech startup, trying to learn from them, you ultimately like fall into groupthink.
Yeah, groupthink's a part of it. Like there's a deeper question to look at there. Like one thing I will mention is like, Russ, you were reading Sapiens a little while ago. Like Yuval's third book, like 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, he mentions how one of the most in-demand careers that people don't really know about moving forward is actually ethics and philosophy. Because let's say you have a self-driving car, and the self-driving car has to be programmed on how to react in a catastrophic situation. So you're driving down the road and you hit a thing of ice, and you can either kill 2 adults or kill 6 children, and your car decides, not you, because your car drives itself. Well, the people at the tech companies are the ones who decide what happens. So the programmers of tech actually are going to like program future ethics with AI. So it becomes one of the most important things moving forward as we move into more like AI and automation. So with tech skewing, like I think this all like links into tech skewing left is who are the kinds of people that want to work at a tech company? Like the people on the right tend to be a little bit more like industrious, a little bit more organized, not as much about innovation and consistent change. People on the left, if you think of the job of the left, is change, innovation, take old systems and make them better for like modern times. So it's very like innovative and always changing and always forward thinking. And these people tend to not like as much structure. They want to feel more free. They want more liberty for the individual. So when you get a whole company of people that tends to be those types of individuals, because those are the jobs that they want to work in, a majority of that company will skew left. And then groupthink, as you were saying, would kick in, where all these people, like groups search for consensus, individuals search for truth, right? If there's an individual that comes in and they think differently than the group, they actually threaten the survival of the group itself because they're all banded over a collective idea. So if you get a tech company that's mainly left, the consensus there is like, this is good and this is bad. Because if you believe otherwise, you underpin the whole group dynamic that holds everyone together. So that's a couple reasons as to why I think tech skews left.
And it's interesting too, just because like how much Elon Musk has been ridiculed for a good portion of his career. And now everyone's like, I literally view him as like a savior for humanity.
He is.
The amount of problems he does solve, like Starlink, great example. Now everyone's going to actually be able to have, and this is my philosophy on Starlink, is he's going to be using that anyone in the world can have internet connection. That will cause cryptocurrency to take off. As soon as Starlink is massive and everyone has access to it around the world, because right now it is a little bit not feasible for, say, the people in Tahiti, you know what I mean, living in huts trying to figure out how to do it. But as soon as that is available to everyone across the world, and it's no longer like the same thing with TVs. Like back in the day, a TV was like $3,000. Now you can get a 60-inch flat screen for what, $500-$600. So as soon as that technology is more readily available to people through Starlink, cryptocurrency will take off. The biggest adoption of cryptocurrency will be as soon as Starlink is
I 100% agree, because what's the stat? It's like, I think 60% of the world is still unbankable.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, like crypto is now going to provide that alternative for humanity. And when you think about like with Elon, like I completely agree that he will, I almost could see eventually him having like a Tesla phone, and as long as you just bought the phone, you'd have free internet.
Holy
like
shit.
I could see it go as far as that.
And it's already connected to all like everything he has.
Because he already said like the Tesla phone he wants to create, you should be able to already mine on it. Like so you can whatever. It wouldn't be Bitcoin, but whatever kind of cryptocurrency you could mine on it. And
Doge.
Doge. Watch it become the world currency. But my theory to that is like once that adoption hits, what are the world dynamics going to look like? That's where like, and it kind of brings us back to the Twitter side too, because where I'm really fascinated and kind of watching right now is everybody says we're at the point of like a empire collapse, right? Like the US or whatever is at a point where it should collapse within itself now. And part of me wonders like if Elon is making the kind of bid for Twitter and going after it to keep free speech alive, that's kind of concerning in my opinion. Like if he's having to go to that extent, it's kind of concerning for like, in my opinion, North America and just where we're headed as a society. And if he's seeing that and he's wanting to change that, does that actually end up changing the dynamics of the world? And like when crypto becomes like, let's say everybody that's extremely intelligent, smart, wealthy, all this wants to exit to their own economy, they exit to crypto. Next, you know, it's like El Salvador is like, hey, Bitcoin City, it's the most advanced city. There's innovation happening. Everything's going on. It's safe. And you can just pay everything with your crypto and you don't have to pay any tax. Come over here. What happens when they start? Everybody starts migrating all to these different areas and leaving and creating the innovation there, as opposed to like the innovation happening in Canada or United States. Then as a society, do we start to become like not even like stagnant? Like, do we just decline as a society? Like,
I do think the bureaucracy of North America does hinder us in the crypto space, just because there's so many policies that are in the work.
we should be leading. We should be leading the whole crypto innovation.
Like,
Or not.
yeah, like a lot of these things. I was listening to something on Bitcoin policies from the Investors podcast, and this guy was just talking about how long it takes for someone to implement a policy to make it like almost like it would be legal tender or law, right? So like all the policies they're trying to implement on cryptocurrency has just been a fucking back and forth, like anything in politics, right? Like, you know what I mean? You have Obama come in, he starts Obamacare. You have Donald Trump comes in, totally fucking annihilates everything. So it's no different than all the policies they're making for cryptocurrency just so it can be adopted. Because what's everyone's, I would say, general population, like all the outside thinkers, all the innovators, people that want to see change, they do not care. They want it unregulated.
Yeah.
Where, in my opinion, what will actually have it become massively adopted if there's more regulation. So then say like our parents are like, oh, what happens if my Bitcoin goes missing? They can actually think that, hey, it's regulated somehow.
Safe.
So then that will cause it to get adopted faster in North America. That's solely in North America. I feel that's what will help adopt it. But these policies are just going back and forth, and they're not really getting anywhere to take those steps in the right direction so we can adopt it here. I would say other countries in different areas, it actually has the reverse. Like for them, they all love how it's unregulated.
Yeah.
And that's why they're doing it. But in North America, I feel like the general population will buy in once it is regulated.
Yeah, I guess that is the big question with crypto is like, how is it going to hit mass adoption? That's to me, it's kind of like a tech arms race, if you know what I mean. Like which coin and which company is going to simplify it enough to take it to the masses, and what is going to cause like that tipping point.
I think it comes down to the point of like when everybody in the world truly at their fingertips can afford to just work via. Actually, I should explain this better. Let's say like you're in a remote village somewhere and now you have access to Starlink and you have your own phone. Now you can start to understand what the internet's about. After you start to navigate and understand the internet, you start to see opportunities, being that we're in the gig economy, you can remotely work. Next thing you know, you're like, okay, well, I'll just do this for free in exchange for some coins. Next thing you know, with those coins, now you have money. Now with the money, you can then go buy a flight, move to a different city, whatever. Then you further innovate within your life. I think when that happens, as people start to like be able to come out of like extreme poverty to like not extreme wealth, but like to like a level that like it almost like cuts down the time from like when somebody in extreme poverty has to then even just be like middle class or whatever you want to call it. Crypto can cut that down to like less than a year if they know what they're doing within the space or they are able to contribute enough. So I think when you start to see that happen, I think that'll be a big portion of mass adoption because I think just more people will be using it.
Yeah.
And then I think another part of the mass adoption is like, and I always say this is like when it becomes branded properly. Like you're not going to say NFTs, like,
Yeah.
like you need to brand it in a way that like, let's say like
Goldman Sachs.
In a way, yeah, or like even
Royal Bank of Canada.
Something like that, or even to the degree of like Maddie's like using some sort of app that's utilizing the blockchain. She doesn't even realize it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when it becomes just a system that you don't have to say, oh, it's this NFT that went through the blockchain and did all this. Like as soon as it becomes like very dumbed down and just like super simple, I think that'll be a point of like adoption as well, as once it's branded in a very, for lack of a better word, like branded in a sexier way.
Yeah, in a more simplified way for the average consumer that isn't.
Because
So
I think right
tech-heavy.
now, like crypto is predominantly male, and like predominantly like males that are just like very into like the tech side. So I think once we start to move down, and then you're starting to get like a mass female adoption too, then that's when you hit the curve, I think. But to bring it back, I'm curious on like, so with Elon's takeover, how does this like play by play break down? Because like I've been trying to figure out. I'm not too familiar with how he can just like come in and secure, but I know they like implemented a poison pill to kind of like deter him from that. So, Russ.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting because he's offered 44 billion to buy them and take them private, and right now their market cap is 35 billion. So they're currently trading this morning around $46 a share, and he offered at $53 a share. So he is offering a premium to purchase them.
And it is like a legit premium. I remember reading some stuff that some of the people there, like on the company, were like, he needs to have a bigger offer. Do you think he actually needs a bigger offer, or are these people just like blowing smoke?
So that's the whole idea of the poison pill. So the poison pill, the main reason, there's two reasons why they put it. Yeah, so the poison pill, every board of directors or every publicly traded company will have a poison pill, and this is to prevent exactly what Elon Musk is doing. A hostile takeover of the company, where he's so wealthy he's able to just buy more shares than anyone, and then he can actually dictate what happens. So Twitter's poison pill kicks in once someone gets 15% share ownership, and what they're going to do is they're going to dilute their shares. So they're going to offer more shares to the public, and they're going to offer them at a discount. What I read is that they're going to offer current shareholders 50% off the current price to buy more shares. So they make it super advantageous for whoever like owns Twitter, whoever wants to get into Twitter, to be able to be a part of it.
Is it that advantageous though? Because then they're diluting their own shares too.
But it makes it harder for him to acquire more. So like you just think all of a sudden you have.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So there's 30 million shares available on the market today for their volume, and say all of a sudden people have owned Twitter for a long time, and you get 1 million people to buy, who already own Twitter, buy their shares at a 50% discount. Well, there's no better way of protecting and acquiring more money than with other people's money for them.
Yeah.
But it's also a good negotiation tactic, because then it says, hey, your offer, you got to boost that up. Pretty plain and simple to put it that way. So they do it for two reasons. The one, to protect themselves, and two, to make them offer a better offer. Because for him, if they do implement the poison pill, it's going to take a mass amount of resources, a mass amount of time, and the most importantly, more capital. I was reading up on, there's a few different ways that he plans on financing it, and obviously they haven't disclosed any of those things. Like he has access to a lot of capital, so
Yeah.
he'll be able to figure it out that way. So I think Twitter's biggest push is, hey, they probably will let him do it. I do think, but he's got to buy it for even a bigger premium.
And he already said he won't. From what I've seen, and you're probably more up on this than me, but the little bit that I read was that Elon basically said, this is the price. It's already a premium. I will not go any higher. And if you do not agree to this, I am going to go through, and like I have a plan B that I'm going to execute, and this is not a threat. This is me just being transparent.
Yeah.
That thought, one last point on that. When he said that, I honest to God think that if he does not buy Twitter and they don't accept, he's going to start his own social media platform and tank Twitter into the ground.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree? And do you think that should influence their decision of selling?
I was literally just going to say, like, his plan B, they should be worried about. Yeah, I think like the reason Elon decided to buy Twitter as opposed to making his own social media was because it's essentially cheaper and easier to innovate and grow Twitter based on its already user base, based on the buzz it already has around it. And I think he sees that it's like still, in a way, it is undervalued, but it's undervalued because like the board has been just fucking Twitter the entire time. Like their board is just horrible. And even like Jack, said that as well, right? And he like was the co-founder of Twitter, and I think that maybe influenced why he left too. But I actually think that like Elon has a set price in mind. I think that's why he said, what was the final price? 44 billion, right? So he's probably figuring, okay, past the 44 billion mark, can I not just even if he went and SPAC'd his own social media company, like the hype on that, the guy's a master at getting stock prices up, right? So think about it. Yeah. He could do insanely well with that. And I just think that he's kind of figured out, okay, 44 billion is my price. We'll get Twitter. Otherwise, we'll start our own. And I mean, maybe he'll even make it decentralized. Like, who knows what he would do with it. But that's kind of my thought, is like, he realizes like right now it's just super cheap to buy Twitter at 44 billion. It's just easier, cheaper. You already have the mass amount of people on there. You don't need to like go through the whole like process of creating another social media account, getting it to scale, getting everybody in, and like working out all the tweaks. But at the same time, he could do it.
He could. Question I have for you on this one, Russ, is I remember reading too that some people were going to decline Elon's offer because they don't believe in what he's going to do with the company. Like, that's the whole idea of like, his whole thing is, I'm going to buy it for free speech. And some people in the company, like if groups search for a consensus, like groupthink, they're like, we don't like that. Like, we don't agree with free speech. So a bunch of the people on the board were like, we're going to decline his offer. But I read that they can't decline it for that reason. Is that actually true?
I don't actually know the answer to that question. I think it's quite evident with the way that how they do control what people can say on there, like deleting Donald Trump's a good example. Yeah. That is important to them. And the craziest part, like going back to our main thing, is politics. Like Donald Trump ran for president as soon as he had a certain amount of Twitter followers. That was in his campaign. He had been debating doing it for years, but as soon as he hit a certain amount of Twitter followers, he knew that he had the potential to win an election. Doesn't matter what qualities he had, what he all brought to the table, is he has had the resources of getting people's attention, which is the most important commodity in today's world. Why is Elon Musk finally blowing up? He's solved so many people's problems that he probably gets more attention than anyone else. You can strike up a conversation with anyone about Elon Musk. Everyone has heard of him. Yeah. And so that's where he comes in, he does that. And I would say that's just a generational thing too. Like, a lot of the board members and people are probably at that age of not wanting to adopt the new way of the gig economy, even though it is a tech social media thing, like app. The people that sit on there are going to be it's just that age, you know what I mean, of that generation. They don't want to be proven wrong. Like, they don't want to see this guy come in and change their plan, right? It's no difference than if you're running a business and someone comes in, hey, you're actually doing this wrong, and I'm going to change it.
Yeah, I think it's also a function of like, it kind of clashes with their beliefs. I think like their viewpoint of the world is completely different than Elon's. Yeah. And like even the CEO of Twitter is like huge on censorship. Like, he's all about it. He wants it. And
who's the current CEO? It's not Jack Dorsey, right? You guys
no. There's a new CEO. I'd have to search up his name. I don't know it off the top of my head. This is
when Joe Rogan gets the guy to pull it up.
Yeah.
Eileen, can you pull up who is the CEO of Twitter?
There you go.
Yeah, could you just pull that for me?
But I think that like it clashes for all of like their views, and we got it.
Parag Agrawal as of 2021. Parag. Oh, interesting.
So he's like super for censorship, and I think that's and you know what? This is an interesting perspective that like maybe we didn't really even think about. Do you think part of it is like Elon Musk safeguarding his like, so if attention is the most valuable currency in the world, in my opinion, it is right now. Like, attention can impact everything that happens in the world. If that is the most valuable currency in the world. Elon Musk's got majority, like let's say what, 80% of the attention, it comes through Twitter. Like anything he does, it goes through Twitter. Do you think him buying it is his like defense against literally getting wiped off of it? Like, not saying they ever would, but like, what if one day there was like a big enough feud and they're just like, boom, you're cut off like Trump? And do you think a portion of it, like not the biggest reason why, but do you think just like maybe in the back of his mind, it's like, well, as long as I own it, nobody can fuck with me.
Dude, that's something like from a marketing perspective for your business. He has 87 million followers on Twitter. What would you do as a business owner to have access to be able to tweet something and it reaches 87 million people at any time? It doesn't matter. Like as soon as he like say like, you know, when they come out with the Tesla truck or whatever news, he just makes a tweet about it. And that's a bigger unpaid marketing push than any company would be able to do.
Oh yeah.
You know, like just from that perspective, that might be why he thinks it's so valuable. I spend, you know what I mean, because he's such a long-term thinker, over the next 20 years, if I'm able to take this platform, is that what's going to grow my internal business or leave my legacy even? Great. Like,
yeah, it's interesting.
There's so many ways to think of it.
Yeah, there might be something there for sure, where it's, as we said, probably a very multifaceted decision.
I think every single thing Elon does, there's the front of it. So let's say even like with Tesla, right? This is actually the way I see Elon. So he finds like the sexiest front of whatever business he does. So let's say like Tesla, it's, oh my God, the amazing electric cars, and you can go into like ludicrous mode. They go super fast. The real back end, like 10-year play is we're going to become, and then also on the front end, everybody here's like open source. You can see how he made the cars. On the back end, he's now going to become the most prominent battery maker for all EV vehicles, right? So that's his play. It's not as much the Tesla front car. That's like what gets the hype and builds it all up. But on the back end, it's the battery. Same with SpaceX. It's like, we're going to Mars, this massive mission. But like, that's the front end of it. That gets everybody attached to the mission. On the back end, it's like, yeah, but we're also going to shoot 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 satellites up into space quicker, more efficiently at a lower cost than everybody else. And now we're going to have worldwide internet, right? So Twitter, okay, now he's buying Twitter. What's the front end? What's the back end of it, right? So it's like, I always think there's like two ways that he looks at it. And like, he's very strategic, whereas one way he'll like really push it out there to the public, and that's where everybody notices it. But then on the back end, there's also a bigger underlying reason. I think the back end of it is like he's genuinely concerned about like United States or like North America. And I think that maybe in one way he views it as like a safeguard to actually protecting like democracy and like stopping a collapse of the United States. I don't know, but like maybe he sees it to that degree. I mean, right now, he honestly should be praised in the United States. And they literally won't, like, Biden won't even mention his name when it comes to electric vehicles. Like, the guy literally is the reason everybody's making electric vehicles now. And they hate on him. You know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah,
I don't know, that like grinds my gears a bit, but it's also just like, I think he also notices that and was like, well, let me, like Twitter pretty much won Trump's election. What else can it do?
Man, there's two ways that I could go with this, two main points, but I want to see what you guys think would be more valuable. We got point one, which is Elon Musk's way of thinking and like how he was able to innovate with Tesla and SpaceX, or the ethic behind like buying Twitter and like what happens when countries actually fail.
Let's go the first.
Want to know what the first one? Okay, we're gonna keep it more business thinking related. All right, so do you guys know what like first principles thinking is? Like always from the ground up. Like I was actually reading like The Art of Impossible, and they talked about Elon Musk specifically.
Oh, really?
Like it was their example driving home how to learn and like relearn and whatnot. And they talked about how when he was doing Tesla, and I didn't actually know he thought about this with space, or actually they mentioned SpaceX too, so they mentioned both, that whenever we're thinking and learning anything, we need what is called a truth filter. So we have to have some kind of metric to like learn something and be like, hey, is this bullshit or not? Like we need some kind of detector, and everyone has a different one, right? Some people have groupthink as their truth detector. It's like, does this align with the group? If not, I'm out. I would argue that's a very terrible way to filter information because you're not thinking for yourself. But Elon Musk's is first principles. So you go down to the very, very basics, and then you build your way up. And if anything on the top, like upper ends the basics, then you're like, okay, maybe that's not right. So that's his truth filter. So when he went to do Tesla,
Sorry, give an example of what that would be.
I'll use the Tesla as an example.
Sure, yeah.
So when he went to do Tesla, he was like, okay, I need to do, we need to do solar. So the problem with solar is that there's only so much daylight, and there's some days where you don't get a whole lot of daylight. So people still need power in the evening. So how do we store that power and like get enough of it during the day that it could last over the night and over multiple days, to do like Tesla, like not only just with cars, but with homes and everything.
Oh, you're
right?
talking about the battery packs.
The battery packs,
Okay,
yes. So is a battery pack problem. So he's like, okay, how much would it cost for me to buy these batteries? And it was way too expensive. That's why no one had done it. They're like, you can't buy batteries like that. It's super expensive. So, okay, first principles, what makes a battery? And then he looked at all the individual pieces and found out that like as a commodities, you could buy them for like pennies on the dollar. They were super cheap. So he bought all the individual pieces and hired people to manufacture the batteries from scratch in-house. And that alone cut the cost of the batteries down by like 80%. So that was actually how he innovated. Same thing with SpaceX actually, is it was too expensive to do the rockets the way that they'd always done them. So he went to first principles. Okay, well, what makes up a rocket? And then he bought all the individual pieces and then actually made it in-house and cut the cost down by 80%.
Right.
So an idea of first principles is just what are the absolute like ground level basics, and then you go up.
Interesting. Okay.
It's probably the most profound way to do business.
It's so good in business, like, and it's a lot of like the world's most popular philosophers, like they're like first principles thinking. Like you always start at principles and you go up from principles. You never try to like unend principles. And there's something to be said that there's probably an 80-20 rule to principles. We know that there are certain like contextual exceptions to every rule, but in terms of like filtering thinking and innovation, that's how Elon Musk has been able to innovate so much. And going back to the Twitter thing, it makes me wonder if he looks at it and goes, I think that current social media is a threat to democracy. What's the first principle? And he just like goes down to like the first principle level, like, okay, well, how would we solve the problem? Tech is currently skewing democracy. What platforms would I have the most influence on to change? Okay, do I start a new one or do I buy it? And like, I imagine his thinking going through that, like, if you're trying to solve the tech democracy problem, where do you start? And he's probably like, the best solution is just to buy Twitter.
Probably because, like, for time's sake, like for him to launch another social media platform will take immense amount of time and focus, where he has so many things on the go right now. It's just better for him to buy
Resources.
Yeah.
The resources behind that too. Yeah. But I do like how he like his ideology too is like, we're just going to take it private. Like we're not going to be influenced by the public market. We're just straight up taking it private, and we're going to run it the way it needs to be run. And honestly, like, this sounds kind of crazy, but I could, because he already has like the base, like the user base on Twitter, let's say he does acquire it, I could actually see him coming in and like going full service social media, like branch off Twitter into a version of TikTok, branch off Twitter into a version of YouTube, branch off Twitter into a version of Instagram. Because they all, like YouTube, I actually think would be the strongest play for him. If he branched off, like this might be like really out there, but it's just the fact that like they still censor on YouTube. He could come in and like be like, boom, here's the Twitter's version of a YouTube, and try and gain mass adoption that way.
Here's a question for you guys. If he bought Twitter and made it a free speech platform, obviously anyone that gets like X'd or axed anywhere else is just going to go to Twitter because they're never going to get canceled, basically. Especially if they adopt like Web3 technology, then being canceled on the internet would actually be like almost impossible with Web3 implemented in the right way. So do you think if Elon bought it and was like, we are setting a precedent moving forward that social media is free speech, highest value, do you think other companies would actually follow? Or do you think that they would still continue to censor even if it like slowly dug their own grave? Because like as we're on about with rethinking, we're just on about thinking like there are other founders and companies like BlackBerry, I think you said Kodak to have a good example, that refuse to innovate and just like the mighty fall. Is him buying Twitter going to set a new precedent that other companies are going to have to meet and rise up to? Or do you think it's not going to do anything?
The only company that would be ByteDance because they innovate very fast. But I don't think they would because Chinese government, right? I don't think they would want that unless they allowed it within North America, but I still don't think so. Facebook or Meta, I guess it's called now. No way. I don't believe they would because they, at this point, the way I view it is like they've already dug themselves a grave. They are refusing to, and like they think that like Web3 is now going to be their play or the metaverse is going to be their play, and maybe it will. I mean, we won't know for another 5-10 years maybe, but I think at this point they already took their eyes off the ball when it comes to social media. Like, I mean, if they were ones to innovate very fast, they would have competed with TikTok. But instead, TikTok came and dominated like insane. And then like what, 6, 7, 8, 9 months later, Instagram comes in, introduces Reels. YouTube comes in with YouTube Shorts, but it's still not TikTok. You know what I mean? So they already saw the rise of TikTok, and it was like very in your face.
Well, it makes me wonder if over the course of years, it would like cause a shift in the market. If Twitter's like gonna, like, especially as you're saying, if he actually starts to branch Twitter off and adopt other features, and it becomes not just known as like a social media brand, but some kind of overarching umbrella company. Like, do you guys think it would influence the market that much, or do you still think that these other companies aren't going to do it?
I think it'll speed up the death of the other companies, in my opinion. And I think maybe it'll allow for the rise of new ones to come in their place.
Yeah.
I actually just kind of thought about this too. Like, I think a big play on Twitter for him is Twitter is gaining popularity now. Like, so Twitter was like super popular when it launched and just fucking died. Yeah. And it was just like this place where everybody just fought about politics, right? Mm-hmm. Now it's become an actual like kind of area where for philosophy, people to share their thoughts. Honestly, it's like it's the news. Like anything you want to know what's happening in the world, you just go on Twitter, type in the hashtag, boom, you're finding out everything the fastest, right? But it's also, in a way, the most prominent Web3 social media app. Yeah. So like everything that happens in Web3 is kind of talked about on Twitter. So do you think that's also a play by Elon? Is like he sees that movement? Because I mean, he made the joke of like allowing Dogecoin to you can like tip with Dogecoin on Twitter or something like that. So I mean, yeah. Personally, I just like what excites me is if he gets it. I think the innovation on Twitter over the next 5 years will be so crazy that like what we know of Twitter as now will not be it in 5 years, because he's such an innovative person. So I could actually see him like going back to the first principles. When he gets a hold of it, I could actually see him breaking down certain parts of Twitter and being like, we need to eliminate this. We need to do this. Like I could see him like almost like taking it, trying to start fresh with it, and then revamping it into this whole new brand.
Yeah, I never really thought about it to that degree, but I don't really have too much more to add to that. I think you're right. Like Web3, from my understanding, Web3 and crypto basically rejuvenated Twitter's popularity. I don't know if I'm completely right about that. Like maybe there's other factors, but from my understanding, it was everyone started talking about that on Twitter. And that's like what resurged Twitter's popularity, and now it's just spilling out.
And the funniest part is, how long did it take for Twitter to be like, we'll allow NFTs as a profile picture and be verified?
Yeah, they've already, is that in beta? Or is it already approved?
So I don't know if they've like officially launched it, but think about how long it took them to realize that. Mm-hmm. Like that's where you like, for Elon, he's so ahead of it that, and I think that's what makes him so popular too, is he's like almost representative of like our generation and the way we think with social media. So he's like it's like the same thinking of like old money versus new money. In a way, he like the old generation versus like the new generation. He's a part of that new generation of like social media where something happens and like Dogecoin, for example, right? Like he jumps on the bandwagon and like one, it makes him even more famous and more attention to him. But also it's like pumping Dogecoin and like going crazy on that front. And for him, I think it's like he identifies, okay, the group of people, they're all getting hyped about it. If I jump on the train, it can even go crazier. And I think further your thought of when we were just talking about like NFT profile picture and everything, I think he would have adopted that like right away. He would have like just thrown out a poll on Twitter. Do you want it? Okay, yeah, sounds good. A week later, boom, it's done.
And that's his whole reason why taking it private.
Yeah.
So say he wants to implement something where, say, Dogecoin's the currency that you use on Twitter. He wouldn't have to have a shareholder meetings. He wouldn't have to have voting. He would just be, if it's a private company, okay, yeah, like you're saying, he could take a poll. Okay, whatever one's in favor of this poll, okay, that's what we're going to make. And he can implement it immediately with it being a private company. Yeah. Instead of some of those decisions, you know what I mean, a shareholder meeting in order for you to do it where everyone votes on it, that's like a year away.
Well, man, that's exactly where I think of, would this change the space of tech and the way that people run companies? Like, can you imagine, like Facebook right now, not as popular anymore. Like it's a dying brand as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if Meta's going to save it. It's to be seen, right? If Zuckerberg just made a poll and he was known as that CEO that's like, hey, I'm just for the people and for the users. What do you guys want to see? Here's like 5 things we want to implement. The next day after the poll, he's like, this is what we're doing. Like, that would be so fucking cool of Elon Musk to do. Like, and you can just imagine, you know, he's going to execute, you know, he's in good faith. Is, hey guys, like, what do you think about NFT profile pictures? Everyone's like, fuck yeah. Next day, he's like, okay, done. Oh, what do you guys think about Dogecoin being the official cryptocurrency on Twitter where everyone can just trade Doge and like pay each other in Doge? Everyone's like, nah, we prefer Shiba instead. He's like, okay, Shiba it is. Boom. Like, that would, like, as a platform, like, how dope of a community feel would that be if like the leader is that in tune with just like helping the community and giving it what it wants?
Yeah. That would just cause for mass adoption if people actually knew like, hey, we all got to have a say and it was implemented.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, dude, the thing about like a lot of tech, especially Facebook, no one thinks Facebook has like their best interest in mind.
Dude, Zuck is literally like painted as the devil right now. Like,
yeah.
People hate him.
Yeah, dude.
He was stealing people's information.
Yeah.
Like, you could make, like, and I've told you this before, like, before all those privacy laws, everything that he got hashed on, like, you could advertise to people to, like, this, how much money they had in their bank account. So I would have been able to set an ad if, like, say in real estate, I only want to target people with over $100,000 because I know that's 20% down on $500,000 home, whatever. You know what I mean? I could target the whole entire city of the people that have that amount of money. Like, my leads in terms of converting at like a 1.8 ratio, if I was able to target them, it would have been insane on how fast you would be able to convert people for leads. But that's stealing your information. So everyone had a massive.
It's like we are the product of Facebook.
Yeah.
And it's funny enough, like even with our phones, like everybody makes a joke about how your phone's listening to you. And then you get hit with an ad that you just talked about. Like, of course they're listening to you. It's tech.
Yeah. Then this comes back to like one of our earlier points about how one of the most important jobs moving forward is actually ethics. And I think it's important in business too, because I think ethics is actually one of the determining factors of the longevity of a company. Like, why is Elon Musk so loved? Everyone loves his ethic. Or like the people that will say support Elon are like, he is like for the people. Like, his ethics are based around what is best for humanity, not what's best for business. And then you look at Facebook and you're like, Facebook's only going to do what's best for business. Like, I don't trust them. Like, I would argue that Facebook would have more brand longevity and people would support them more if they supported the ethic. And that's where I think even in business, like, ethics actually becomes so important.
That's super profound that you say that, because it is very true about Musk and how, like, because in my head I'm just thinking about, like, he's always been for the people against the system. Yeah. And like, no matter what happens, he's always like against the system and like will shine light on it if they come after him, right? Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is why people love him so much. But he's also like, I mean, that comes with anything. Like, you're hated by a group of people, right? Yeah. But it's just like, I don't think enough people realize, like, he genuinely, like, I think in one interview, he's like, you don't want my brain. He said, you don't want my brain. Literally, like, I can't sleep. I'm trying to save humanity. Like, he genuinely believes. Part of it is like, I don't know if he believes we're just in a game in like this simulation. He just has fun with it and fucks around because he's so smart. But then part of it is like, yeah, like the humanity might collapse, and I want to make sure that that doesn't happen, right? So,
You guys buzzing from the ephedrine?
It's got me feeling a little weird. Like I have like a bit of anxiety. Like I'm also pretty tired from a lack of sleep, so I can't really tell like what's me like not having enough sleep and what's the ephedrine.
I mean, my sinuses are just nice and clear now, so it's
I will
real
say my
nice.
sinuses are feeling great though.
Yeah, it's good, man. It's like a little caffeine pill.
Yeah, but not caffeine.
If somebody like doesn't know what that is on like the podcast, they're probably listening to me like, methamphetamine?
It sounds like a hard drug. Like,
Yeah.
ephedrine, it makes it sound like we're taking like some hardcore shit, but no, this is bought at a supplement store.
It's a supplement, everybody.
It's for energy, but its main thing that it does is help clear your sinuses. So we just felt like it would maybe just to bring the energy a little bit more, we'll take a...
Oh yeah. So I guess to the mindset and opportunity side of like, well, we were talking about Elon, but let's just like dive into that whole world of what like opportunities, mindset, the future, like how to view the new world economy, I guess.
You know, one thing that you guys said that like you got me thinking about was how to be like a visionary with good execution. Like I think we've all read Rocket Fuel. We're familiar with the idea that a business needs an implementer and a visionary. And I've actually worked at companies where the visionary at the head was a fucking nightmare to work with. Like a guy so disconnected from daily business and systems, his disruption was like detrimental to the company. Like you could argue on some level that he was like a creative genius, but anytime he tried to like get someone to implement anything, it like moved the company backwards.
Do you think that goes more towards leadership?
I think there's like a leadership component for sure, but I think there's also like how do you execute properly on the vision? And this is where the implementer side of it comes in. But you might be thinking that Musk, it seems to me like Musk is really good at being a visionary who's also grounded in reality and understands how to get there. Like that would be something that very few entrepreneurs, at least, or visionaries have. Like, how do you have such a forward-thinking view of the future? If it's true that he wants to buy Twitter because he's like, I can branch it off in all these platforms, I'm going to save democracy, and I'm going to do this by aligning with how business works and follow these steps, and I'm going to execute and follow through. Like, what the fuck does it take to be that kind of visionary?
He's the only one like it. Literally. Like, everyone thinks that we have, like, these big-time skill sets and all that, and he's just getting rewarded for being one of the true people in today's world that is that visionary and implementer. He is very good, and it's probably back to your thing on first principles, is he has his vision, but a lot of visionaries get stuck up in the vision. You know what I mean? And it's like, this is my idea. Okay, team, execute. But he's able to lead them because he is able to implement it.
So I have an interesting take on this. I think from a visionary perspective, he's really good at connecting dots high level. So, you know, when he was a kid, he has, what would it be? Photographic memory, right? So he can read something, and literally if you see like him talking sometimes, he's like looking in his head, right? And I think that's a function of making him a good integrator. So I think he read a lot growing up. He's like big on like becoming a real life Iron Man and everything like that, right? Yeah. I think from an extremely high level, he's like obviously extremely high IQ. From a visionary standpoint, he can connect the dots from a very, very high level. Like, these are the world's biggest problems. Let's connect the dots from what's happening in reality right now. I think him having like a photographic memory makes him extremely brilliant from an integrator standpoint, because he can go into a room for fucking like a week, read everything he needs to know about creating an electric vehicle, come out and know every single main component to what like goes into an electric vehicle, and he can remember it. Like, it's not like we would go and read it and then you'd remember some, you'd have to like actually study it. Him, it's like you read it once and it's like in your mind, which makes it super efficient for him, which then allows him to go to any of the best of the best and be like, you're part of the team now. We need you to like join the here's the big picture, here's the vision. He can sell you on the vision and build the team, and then they actually execute on it. But they can never call him on his shit because he knows it.
He knows his numbers.
Right? So I actually think he's not as, like, he is an integrator, but he's not like some crazy integrator. I think he's just extremely good at connecting the dots. Even from an integration standpoint, I need you. I'm going to put you guys all in a room, sell you the big vision. This is like, and his visions are like big. Like, it's to the point of like, people are leaving their other jobs for this type of work because it's mission driven. It's not, and that's what I think he does the best in the world at, is everything is truly mission driven. It's never about like the business itself. It's about the mission. We're going to Mars because we need to save humanity.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. And I think that's like what makes him a good, also visionary, but also integrator. And that the integrator side is he's just able, because I mean, I don't know how micro it gets, like how small he gets when it's like, you do this, you do that. I think he just integrates at a high level.
It would be kind of similar to say, like, you could relate it to athletes like Michael Phelps, how his like torso is actually longer than his legs, so it makes him a better swimmer. Like, he's naturally gifted as a better swimmer. So obviously Elon Musk having a photographic memory, being able to remember stuff, he just has to learn it, and then he's able to talk about it, able to do it. That probably just builds immense respect into his companies, because like, how many times have you heard your boss has no clue what's going on, or no clue? Like, everyone, when they challenge leaders, it's like, he actually does not know what it takes in order to do this, or he does not know like how to actually do this.
And that, sorry to interrupt, but I was just gonna say that is part of like where visionaries get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Too theoretical.
Too theoretical. Whereas he's able to be very like detailed about it.
Mark Cuban had a really interesting thing on this. This is a little off topic from Elon, but when he bought the Dallas Mavericks, they had one of the worst season ticket holders percentage in the league. And so he's trying to explain his team, and his team's like, well, how do we get these back? Well, he's like, he took it back to first principles. Like, why don't we just call all the old season tickets holders and tell them that there's a new owner and he's going to do everything to change the team. So he's kind of going back and forth. And so then he just decided to make all the calls himself. And so then his team's like, okay, like, if this guy's willing to do that, understands like what it is. He's like, I didn't have no big, huge marketing pitch. I wasn't going to like start doing this. He's like, I just called every person that had once been a season ticket holder of the Dallas Mavericks, and they're able to get a majority of them back. Yeah. So it's like, the answers I don't think are ever like that far, especially in business. You know what I mean? Like, number one, you know what I mean? And this is probably why Elon is blown up, because like, what we think is, how much money can we make? How do I make the most money? How can I get the most customers? Where he's like, how can I actually save the world is the questions he's asking. So maybe if you want to truly be that evolutionary, the once, you know what I mean, there's like the massively respected or the biggest business model ever, the questions or the things you're solving have to be guided more towards humanity and wanting to save it. Like, you take Uber, for instance. Yeah, the convenience. Yeah, you help solve a problem of convenience now instead of taxis. Where, okay, no, I'm actually going to provide the world with solar energy and internet. That's something that changes everyone's life. It's not just like, hey, you made my life a little bit easier. That is legitimately a life-changing service. And that's what he's always done.
And I think like business is just his mode of like actually creating the change. I think a big portion of that is like, you look at when I don't know if it was PayPal or what, but he basically like figured out how he could live on $1 a day, right? So he literally like lived on $1 a day so that he knew he could just like, I think he experimented that for like 30 days, and then it gave him the understanding that like, okay, it's okay if I have no money at all because I can still eat. So I can now put everything I want into, I think it was like PayPal at the time or whatever it was. And then look at like Tesla and SpaceX, the verge of bankruptcy.
In 2008.
The verge of bankruptcy. And then he, you know, goes, what was it? Like all in, like he put another 100 and some million into it. Like he had to go borrow money after that or something like that. 30 mil.
But yeah, like he had the decision, and he talks about this a lot. He's like, imagine raising your kids, and then you have a decision to kill one of them.
Yeah.
I have $30 million. That's enough to make one company survive.
Yeah.
And I have the choice to either kill one of them for sure, I'd be able to survive, or I choose both, and the odds are pointing that both my kids are going to die.
Yeah.
And he chose to save both companies because he believed what he was doing was going to change the world. And it worked out.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot different than, say, like the dude designing the dating app and he's on the verge of bankruptcy. Like, it's just weird how things like that work out when you're literally solving those problems. But yeah, like he had $30 million left. He put 15 in both.
Yeah.
And
because if he didn't believe in the mission, just keep your 30 mil. You're good for the rest of your life and just bankrupt both companies. Right?
A lot of people would think that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, the economy turned. I still got 30 mil.
Yep.
Whatever. I'll start the next business. I'll take this one as a loss. And
it sounds like really crazy. I don't think he would do it. But do you guys ever see the potential of him running for president?
I think it would take too much of his time away. Here's, you know what? Guess what you guys make me think about here is, so business is a how, if you guys think about it. It's a how and like a means to implement change or get a certain result. So Elon's result is like, okay, I want to change humanity. And a lot of people have this in some capacity. Even activists want to change humanity. But their how is different. Their how isn't, let's go align it with business. Their how is like, let's go make noise. But now the real question comes to like, okay, if you have a result you want to get and you want to change humanity, how do you actually get the result? If you were as aligned, like first principle thinking, aligned with reality as possible, and you wanted to change the world, how do you actually do it? And it sounds to me like Elon just looks at business and says, that's a means to the how, like it's a means to an end. It's just, this is the most actionable way aligned with the world to actually change the world, is to integrate ethical market play.
Yeah, I mean, because really at the end of the day, business centers around money, and money is just a way to get people motivated in a direction, right? Or money's the reward for the direction people head.
Yeah, money's like a part of the exchange.
Exchange, I guess. Yeah, that would be the best way to say it. So it is the way our whole world operates right now. It is the easiest way for him to take massive action with like a mass amount of people would be through that mode.
And that's why I don't think he would run for president, because I think he would ask himself, okay, like, what would this actually do? I think he's aware that even if you run for president, you still don't get that much control. Like, there's still so many systems and safeguards in place. I don't think he's going to go in and try to uphold the entire government systems and redo them and make them like a private company. I think he would just say, I would, like, really, instead of running for president, buying Twitter probably is the play. Just being like...
That's a good point, yeah.
The 4-year terms, and they can only serve for 2 terms, is literally the worst thing for U.S. politics.
Yeah.
Well, here's a thought. What if it's just the best we have? What if democracy is the worst system for politics except for all the rest?
I do agree. Democracy is the best thing. Like, I would never want to live in a communist or a dictator, country.
Yeah. I think the only other option eventually might be some sort of decentralized systems in place to hold accountability.
With space cops.
Yeah.
You used to have space cops patrolling the world.
Yeah, exactly. They just ripping around. I'm still waiting for the day Elon Musk just like appears in his Iron Man suit.
RoboCop suit.
That'd be so sick.
Probably
And
has,
he's got a Tesla logo on the front.
Literally, he's probably got the suit ready, locked and loaded, just waiting for like some sort of like crazy event to happen, and then he just like shows up. Or, he is just the alien.
Like what he talked about on Rogan's podcast.
Yeah. Oh, man. A side note, I actually think he's Satoshi.
I actually don't believe it.
No?
I think it's a really, really good theory, and I can understand why people would think it. But like, I don't know. I don't think so. Just with how much like love he gives to everything, and he's like, this is like what I'm going all in on. If he truly was pioneering Bitcoin, I think he would have just like created it, owned it, and been like, we're revamping PayPal into crypto from the get-go. I've already created Bitcoin and this is how we're going to do it. And I think he would have just pushed it.
Maybe you're right. Okay.
Yeah, he likes to be the...
Because I did hear a very compelling like breakdown of...
I think that's one of the best things about Bitcoin is that no one knows who founded it, and it caused like the whole thing for more people to talk about it. And so then more people talk about it, the quicker it gets adopted.
Best and scariest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the mission, like you were saying. It's cool to hear that this really innovative technology like wasn't really a ploy for money, because the creator, no one even really knows who he is.
And he wants nothing to do with it now, even though how many Bitcoins he supposedly has is incredibly wealthy.
Yeah.
I wonder what it would be like to go like walk down the street knowing you invented Bitcoin.
What it would be like knowing that you have that amount of money, but you can't touch it, because then
The money wouldn't even matter. I don't
people
think.
find out who you are. But yeah, like how many billions of dollars has he got in Bitcoin? But say if he's like living like a real sheltered life, and it's like, oh man, I do got 4 billion in Bitcoin. I could just go buy whatever I want if I want.
The funniest was
But then his ledger would show up and everything.
who's that really like old guy who's like some motivational speaker, and he like, I've seen clips of him, and he
What,
just
the
like,
Dalai Lama?
no, fuck, I think his name's like Dan Pena or something like that.
Yeah.
He's so funny, like, because he's just like this
Guy
old
with
guy.
glasses.
Yeah, he just reminds you of like this like angry like grandpa that just like goes on this tangent. He's like, you know who created Bitcoin? No, none of you idiots do, but I do. It's Putin. And he goes on this like tangent, and like, but he has this like cult following that like people
Dude.
think he's like a god.
The I know what you're talking about. Always wears a suit with a
Yeah,
red
always
tie,
wear the
almost
suit, and he
pinstripe.
just like just rips everybody apart.
Yeah, talks with like the utmost like authority and conviction. Like, have you seen his little fucking? He has like a retreat where all the guys come in. He makes them all box. Like, he talks about how like tough he is. It's just like, okay, old man.
You have to like pull up clips of him, because it's like,
I will.
He
You
gives
can
the
get
worst
such a good
advice.
one. Oh, yeah,
he
worst
gives
advice.
the worst advice.
but the funniest shit to watch. It is.
that just goes back to entertaining.
Yeah,
But he's also capped. Like,
but that like his one saying about it does bring up a good point. Like, we don't know. Like, what if Putin created it and it was like this like 20 fucking year play, and next thing you know, that was like the way to basically destabilize the world and give it into favor of like actually making even Bitcoin a world reserve. I don't think that is.
yeah.
I don't believe that theory, but I'm just saying like that is the one aspect of like we don't actually know who created it, which is the very like intriguing and exciting side of it, but also the scary side. There's always two sides of the coin of it.
That's true. I guess we don't really know what kind of person he is. We assume
That's
because he
right.
doesn't want credit, but we don't actually know. Maybe he doesn't want credit because he's actually a terrible person.
Well,
Like,
or it's a group of people, right?
that too. You know, I do love the story that I read, though, about the inception of Bitcoin. I thought it was unreal. That the reason that they created Bitcoin was because of the government bailouts of Wall Street after the 07-08 crash. Because they were, like, people were so pissed. They're like, these companies got to take on so much risk for profit and socialize the losses by putting it on the people with government bailouts, that these people banded together and said, fuck them. We're starting a decentralized like currency that is controlled by the people, so this will never happen again. I think that is fucking incredible.
I think that was the catalyst. I think the technology was always kind of there, slowly building up. And I think like when that happened, that was like the true catalyst to like, fuck this, we're doing it.
It's pretty cool the amount of people that like when bitcoin.org was like where everyone would chat, like all the chat rooms and stuff, the amount of people that actually like devoted their life unpaid to solving the problems of like the software when it first came out. Like there's that one story when it went to like, was it like Bitcoin 2.0, and it actually like was a flaw. Like there's major flaws in the code and the software that they implemented. So then they had to go back down, which totally fucked the price. And then they re-implemented it. But like, what was it like? It was like GTOX or something was like the main platform that it was exchanged on. And it was through PayPal accounts. Like one guy held it all. And then there was that other website where you would buy illegal drugs with Bitcoin on it.
Yeah.
And then
That's
that
actually-
guy got...
That guy get busted. That was actually what I think drove the first round of adoption for Bitcoin, funny enough.
It was
It
illegal
was.
activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they realize it's literally open source accounting. So, it's probably not the best way to hide your money. So,
Well, I just thought it was hilarious. Like, you go to the website and you'd buy, like, say, cocaine from it, and then it would fucking mail it to your door.
yeah.
Like, or whatever drugs they were selling. Like, there was a multitude of different things on the website. But it was just like, oh, hey, boys, I'm going to order up our stuff for next weekend. Like, it's supposed to be here. Like, imagine going to Pure later and you fucking pick up your package of drugs.
Oh, man. It's crazy. But I think we should probably wrap it up here. We're getting close to an hour.
We're over an hour.
We're over an hour. Right?
Yeah, I figured that was a pretty good way to end it. Just like, hey, Bitcoin, illegal drugs, cocaine at the doorstep.
Yeah.
Anyway, see you later.
See you later. We should wrap this all up with kind of a thought process of like, okay, if like we're talking a lot about like mission driven companies. I mean, we're trying to, with the whole state of flow, like we're really trying to create the mission around a new way of entrepreneurship. Like obviously hustle is important. Like you have to work fucking hard in your business, but it's not the only thing in your life. Like there's so many aspects of your life. Like there's your health, wealth, obviously that's a big part of it, and relationships. So it's like, how do we reorient? Like I guess a big part is like we need to think pretty hard about how we reorient the way we talk about our mission, and like how can we do it in a way that gets people to join the mission of like being in that like new way of entrepreneurship, being in a state of flow, living your best life. Like,
yeah, definitely. Like I don't know about you guys. Like I think we're all aligned here. Like I truly believe that this is the future of entrepreneurship. That just like killing yourself in business and sacrificing literally everything might work for a small minority of people. Like Elon Musk is a great example where he's like, I'll sacrifice everything to make like change humanity. But I think there's only a small fraction of people that will do that, and that those people judge themselves on the hustle culture standard. But I don't think it's healthy at all. And I think that what we are doing truly will impact entrepreneurship by being like, you know what, we can hustle, but we can also have our cake and eat it too. Not in like an entitled, unrealistic way, but you can use good systems, automation, delegation, and knowledge to leverage in such a way that you can have an incredible optimized life and still get extremely rich.
absolutely.
I think a big takeaway too from this is like it's just such a good brain dump for us to talk about things and really learn. And the thing that like people always view entrepreneurs is either like they hit it off or they fail. So either you're gonna make a ton of money or you're not. Where the new way of entrepreneurship is like it shouldn't be money driven. Like none of Elon Musk's things that he's done in terms of his companies have been about making money. And those are good questions for us to ask in the future. Like, how can we actually impact the world without being money the number one driver? But the new way of entrepreneurship is, hey, if I can run my own business or create something myself, and even if it pays you less or a little bit more than what your current employer, but you're able to do it where you're healthy, you have better relationships, why the heck not? Who cares if you start a business and it's an online t-shirt distributor and you only make $50,000, but you only work 20 hours a week and you get to travel, or you get to go spend time with your kids, or you're the person that is there all the time at every family event doing all this. That's what people really need to understand is it's not so much about either you're going to make a ton of money or you're not. Why don't you just figure out a way to just make your life better through entrepreneurship and to have all those three things come in succession?
I think a big part of it is just playing the long game too. Understanding this is what I want in 10 years, so I don't need to rush in 1 year to get it. And like when you play that long game, you avoid burnout, and that's what a lot of people like. That's what happens to a lot of people. They end up burning out, and then that's it, right? And I think you just live a better life.
Live a better life. I think we end it there. Just live a better life.